Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to our special coverage for the current events taking place in the whole world on the political, economic, and sports segments. Our dear viewers will go to a short break, and after that, we'll start our special coverage, so stay tuned.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived at the G20 summit taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with the participation of the president. The group of 20 world's largest economy G20 summits are kicking off today in Rio de Janeiro. Ahead of the G20 summit, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with Brazilian President Lula da Silva and signed a joint communique on elevating the level of partnership between the two countries to the level of strategic partnership. More details in the following story.
On the sidelines of the G20 summit in the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro, President Fattah el-Sisi met with Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva late on Sunday. Presidential spokesman said President el-Sisi was keen on thanking President da Silva for inviting Egypt to participate in the G20 summit this year, which reflected Brazil's high appreciation to Egypt's pivotal role in both Middle East and Africa. President el-Sisi praised organization of the summit and keenness of the Brazilian side on including the priorities of the developing countries on the agenda, topping the list of which is launching global alliance against hunger and poverty in light of growing geopolitical, economic and social challenges across the world. For his part, Da Silva praised the active Egyptian participation in the meetings of the group throughout the year, which supported the needs and priorities of developing countries, stressing his appreciation to participation of President Fattah el-Sisi. The President and Da Silva tackled Egypt's efforts to restore stability in the Middle East and reach an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. President el-Sisi praised Brazil's position in support of Palestinian cause. Following the meeting, Egyptian and Brazilian leaders signed a joint communique regarding elevating the bilateral ties between the two countries to the level of strategic partnership in order to achieve aspirations of both nations. According to the communique, Egypt and Brazil decided to boost dialogue and understanding through extensive diplomatic ties, holding bilateral meetings and reciprocal visits between top officials from both countries. The communique on strategic partnership comes on the 100th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Egypt and Brazil, which coincide with deep friendship ties between the peoples of the two countries. Earlier on Sunday, President Fattah el-Sisi arrived in Rio de Janeiro and was welcomed by leading Egyptian officials and delegation from the Egyptian embassy in Brazil.
And welcome back, our dear viewers, to shed more light on the G20 Summit's economic and trade files. We are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mustafa Naggari, the chairman of the Exporter Association. Dr. Naggari, good afternoon to you, sir.
Doctor? Yes, you hear me?
Yes, I hear you properly. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. Yes, now I hear you. Yeah.
Sir, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived at Rio de Janeiro to participate to the G20 summit's activities, and ahead of the G20 summit activities, the President on the sidelines of the summit held talks with the Brazilian President Lula da Silva and signed a communique to increase the level of bilateral partnership between the two countries to the strategic levels. How do you see this agreement between both Egypt and Brazil?
Well, I can tell you that this is not the first time of Egypt to participate in the G20 summit. This is the fourth time since 2016 in China. And of course, between 2016 until now, Egypt has participated more in 3 summits in India, in I think it was in Austria as well, and then now we are in Brazil.
Yeah.
So this invitation came to just reflect the weight of Egypt in its region, because one of the topics which will be discussed is the reforming of the Gulf region. And of course, Egypt is considered to be one of the main social and political and economical big bodies in the area.
Yes.
So I believe that they consider Egypt is able to talk on behalf of the area, as we were able to talk also in the COP27 and COP28 on behalf of the continent. So it is just an indication about how the world sees Egypt at the time being.
Indeed. Dr. Naggari, we have to mention here the importance of such participation in the G20 summit and the agreements with Brazil as well for the Egyptian economy as well.
Well, of course, as everybody knows that the geopolitical crisis is playing a big role everywhere in the whole world, but everybody is focusing at the time being about the Gulf area. And as we mentioned, that to just to have development and to try to get a sort of investment, I mean that the political issue is a very important issue. And that's why the G20 in this summit will focus on the influence of the international institutions and their role to try to calm down the situation, as everybody knows that with such problems which is happening in Palestine and Lebanon, Syria, Sudan, it's really affecting the area. So that's why President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is going to focus a lot in his speeches about the political situation in the area, and everybody is going to listen to his words, as we always have been. Egypt as an institutional country is able to deliver the files in the best way.
Of course, of course. Sir, also under the slogan, this summit is taking place under the slogan, Building a Just World and Sustainable Planet. The summit discusses several topics of interest to the developing countries, particularly like the social inclusion, combating poverty and hunger, reforming the global governance institution, as well as the energy transition to renewable energy. How do you see these topics, which are going to top the agenda of the talks in the summit, which are of great concern to the developing country as well?
Of course, one of the main topics is going to talk about the food safety and the food security.
Yes.
And on the other topic is going to talk about the power and the transforming of the power and development between the developing countries and the developed countries.
Yes.
So at this stage, I think that talking about the mitigation and limitation of poverty is very important for everybody. We know that we are facing all together a big problem in the food security everywhere.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned before, that Egypt is not only playing a national role by expanding their area for plantation and reclaiming more and more million feet of land for each people only,
Yes.
but it's also playing international role to try to close the gap between the demand and supply in the food security. And also we have to mention that also President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is going to point for the geopolitical problems which
Yes.
is causing a lot of immigration from neighboring countries to Egypt. And I think that it will be one of the main topics tomorrow.
Indeed. Sir, also the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty will also be officially launched during the summit. The importance of that to the developing world as well.
We have seen that always immigration is coming, as we say, from south to north, from the poor countries to the better and better economical countries. And this is coming mainly because of the hunger and because of the poverty. So everybody believes that we all have to work, and the G20 is now is controlling something like 90% of the international economy.
Yes.
So that's why the talks will be talking about how to develop and to have sustainable improvement in the countries of the south. And always President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi talk about this equation, that we have to improve the south at the end so we can all live together and try to mitigate the poverty.
Indeed. Sir, do you agree that this summit is held at a critical time where the international developments are imposing remarkable challenges to the countries worldwide? What's the impact of all these global challenges on the outcome of the G20 summit taking place in Rio de Janeiro?
We have seen that the power is one of the main big problems at the time being. The trade in general is affected by the high freight cost, which is came to up to 4 times than the normal levels, which is causing high prices of everything, starting from the food until the services. So I think that they are trying also to have a topic about the cost of power and transforming power.
Yes.
And of course that everybody is talking now about the renewable energy and to try to find land to affect that, because as we all know, to implement the solar energy, you need big areas and big sum of sun.
Yeah.
But Egypt is always playing a big role for not only for Egypt but also for Africa.
Indeed.
So I think that everybody is going to talk about these problems, about which is affecting also the transforming and the transport of trade and commodities, and try to waive all the barriers, all the custom barriers, if we can say, between the nations, and to try to merge in the bigger clusters, as we know that Egypt is a part now of the continent trade agreement in Africa, which is Africa will be a key player in the coming 20 years for investments and for trade and for services.
Indeed.
So I think that choosing Egypt and inviting Egypt to be present today, it means a lot for us as Egyptians, and it means that we have to say how the world is looking at Egypt at the time being.
Of course. Sir, also the G20 is playing an important role in shaping and strengthening the global architecture and governance on all major economic and international economic issues. What's your comment on that, and to what extent the outcome of this G20 summit, with the participation of most of the world leaders, could help the future of the economy move in a better direction, if I can say that?
I think that the whole world is under new reforming for economy. So as we say that just a few weeks ago, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi were invited to Russia for the BRICS summit, which now is called the BRICS Plus. But at the end, that we see that there is new reforms and new blocks are established at the time being. And I think that, of course, 4 or 5 big members of the G20 are also members in the BRICS. So everybody is trying to have a sort of agreements and trade agreements and economical agreements, no matter that we are having the same borders or the same languages or same even taste.
Indeed.
But at the end, we have at least the same feeling to try to improve the life for our people.
Yes.
So I think that the summit this year will support having new blocks and is trying to convince the recent organization and association to play a bigger role for everybody to merge together and to work in one world. We are not separated at the time being. Everybody have to work together.
Indeed. So to what extent the political changes, if I might say in the word, could shape the decisions of the G20 summit with the changes, of course, in the United States, with the United States elections and new president coming to power next January? To what extent this could affect also the outcome of the G20 summit?
I think, as we know that President Trump was elected, and I think that we will see quite differences in the economical and political influence. Also in the European Union, we have seen that the right parties have gained more power for the last elections with their ideologies and their agendas. So I think that the political issue is going to play a big role at the economy and in the time being. But we agree all, even the Europeans, they agree, and they are, I think, managing now a plan which is called the Mate plan, which will be diverted totally to Africa. And they will start with 4 countries. Egypt, of course, is one of that, because Egypt is considered to be a gate for the European Union. So they are going to improve a lot of sectors. At least they started with 4 sectors, and now we are moving, if I can say, day by day. And we have to mention that we have launched a fast shipping service from Damietta to Trieste, between by the help and support of the 2 governments, to try not only to increase the trade between Egypt and Italy, but between Africa and Europe. Indeed. So I think that the political issue is very important, and we have to benefit all from what would be better for us. We do believe that President Trump is having a more positive agenda about the economy between the U.S. and the participation in the U.S. G20 at the time.
Hope so. Dr. Mustafa Nagari, our economic expert and the chairman of the Egyptian Exporters Association, thank you so much for your precious input. Our dear viewers will go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to continue our special coverage for the latest events in the world in our special coverage. So stay tuned.
تقدير واحترام لبطل حقيقي. البطل ده هو مصر وشعبها. الحكاية مش حكاية لا حكومة ولا قيادة، ده حكاية كل مواطن في مصر. أكرمت مصر وشرفت مصر وعزيت مصر، انتم قتلتم. فالشرف كل الشرف، والكرامة كل الكرامة، والفضل كل الفضل لله سبحانه وتعالى، ثم ليكم انتم. شرفتوني واكرمتموني وعزتوني ورفعتوا راسي قدام الدنيا كلها باللي انتم عملتوه. والله 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 لن يستطيع اي رئيس يقف مكاني هنا انه يقدر يعمل حاجه بدونكم. لن يستطيع. قصه وطن يتحدث عن نفسه، شعب اراد الحياه فاستجاب له القدر.
Continuing our special coverage for the activities of the G20 summit taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who met with Brazilian President Lula da Silva ahead of the activities of the summit. And the two leaders signed an agreement, a communique, to increase the level of cooperation between Egypt and Brazil to strategic partnership. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Medhat El-Meligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador El-Meligi, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you, sir? Mr. Ambassador, under the slogan Building Just a World and Sustainable Planet, the G20 is starting in Rio de Janeiro. To what extent Egypt's participation in the summit is important?
Well, first of all, I mean, the participation of Egypt shows to which extent that Egypt is becoming an international important player on the economic scene. I mean, this is not, of course, the first time the G20 that is known to be the General Assembly of the strongest economies in the world. Egypt has been invited to, this is the fourth time, I believe, after in 2016 and 19, and during the Indian presidency in 2023.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this reflects the growing appreciation of Egypt's international weight and its important role on the regional level.
Yes.
That's from one side. The second thing that is very important is the topics that are going to be discussed and currently discussed in Rio de Janeiro are very important to us. We're talking about social inclusion and how to combat poverty and hunger.
Yes.
And reforming the global governance institutions, the monetary institutions, and how important and vital they are to emerging economies and to countries under in development and so on. So I think that the topics that are discussed are very dear to our hearts, if we can say this, because we are compelled to upgrade the lifestyle and living standards of 110 Egyptians living in Egypt, plus around 10 million refugees who are also sharing our resources as refugees in Egypt. So I think that from one side the topics are important, on the second side it shows that the Egyptian reforms in its economy that have been undergoing since President Sisi took power have been starting to bear fruit, and we are seeing that these reforms are helping more and more to be invited to such forums, and at the same time shows that the world is trusting the Egyptian reforms and that our possibility of attracting more and more investment and so forth.
Yes. Sir, do you agree that the summit is held in a critical time where the international development is imposing certain impact on the outcome of the summit?
Of course. I mean, it is not secret that the current timing is a very delicate moment at the moment. I mean, we are faced with a lot of instability and a continuing, of course, Israeli escalation, whether in Palestine or Lebanon or even to other areas as well. And the Egyptian efforts are praised, I mean, to restore stability in the Middle East are praised by all the countries around the world. And this is also one of the reasons why Egypt must be invited, and not just invited, even a guest of honor in all such international fora. The problem is that we are facing a very strong and sensitive moment in the region of the Middle East.
Of course.
Israel is continuing the escalation, and accordingly, we have to be present in such conferences in order to explain the real problems that Egypt is facing at the moment, and how they can help us to convince the international powers and Israel on the danger that is laying ahead in the Middle East if we continue the escalation, and Israel is sparing no effort in jeopardizing.
Yes, I'm afraid Ambassador Medhat al-Miligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much. And now our dear viewers, with the summit of the G20 taking place in Rio de Janeiro.
Dentro de instantes terá início a sessão de abertura da reunião de líderes do G20 Combate à Fome e à Pobreza. Pede-se a todos que tomem seus assentos e coloquem seus aparelhos celulares em modo silencioso. In a few moments, we will start the first session of the G20 Leaders Meeting. We are only waiting for the entrance of the leaders to begin. We kindly invite you to take your seats and set your cell phones in silent mode. Informamos que oferecemos o serviço de tradução simultânea. Orientamos que selecionem o canal correspondente ao seu idioma de preferência. We would like to inform you that the service of simultaneous interpreting is available less from now, and we invite you to select the channel corresponding to your language of choice.
relationships opens up to the world.